Welcome to the fastest stop in town. Today, let me start this bad daf Zion. We are going to begin on Zion with Aleph, about 5 lines from the top. Tahudi Armalhu Be Dirchulaman Be Dirchulaman. Person was very specific, looking for eggs that came from a rooster. However, even though that's what he specified, Yoyble Be the stop the Ma'ara. Instead, he gave him an egg that came from the warmth of the ground. As we mentioned in yesterday's daf, Rashi says here as well that mischamemes bekarka, that the mother hen gets warmed up from the ground. Violetas beitzim, va'oisem beitzim ein megalus afreichem. Now those eggs cannot produce chicks. Now the question is, what did this person want? So also kamed Rav Ami omerhu mekachtoisu v'hoder. In fact, this was a mekachtos. He was specific in what he wanted. He was not given what he asked for, and therefore the money's returned. So Pshita obviously has to return the money. The he really wants it for eating. The reason why he specifically mentioned a rooster, Mishum the Sheminan Tfei, because they're a little bit more fatty, and because of that, perhaps he wanted a more significant egg. So my nafkamina lamesul labeni Kamash Mulan. You would think that maybe all you have to do is just pay the difference between those two types of eggs, a fattier one, a not so fat one, and that would not necessarily constitute as a mekachtos. Kamash Mulan is a mekachtos. So this is the first answer to our question, and I'm actually going to use Rabbi Gibber's questions over here. He says as follows: Maskana Gemara, Ma Kavanas Rav Huna Imarav. What did he mean when he said Beitzah im yetziyasa nigmar? An egg, when it comes out, it's complete. So according to this first interpretation, only if it was actually produced, a laid egg, could it become a chick. But if it just simply came out through Safna Da'ara, then it's not able to produce a chick. Okay. V'boy seima my im yetziyasa nigmar. Ruba nigmra. It means that if the majority of it comes out, it's complete. Rav Yochanan, Beitzah, when it comes to an egg, shiatza ruba merav yomtiv, provided that the majority of it came out already from before yomtiv, even though the chazra, even if it happens to be that it returns back into its mother, muteras l'achla, you're allowed to eat it, because the fact that rove of it came out, rove is considered to be significant. It says if rove of the Beitzah came out, then went back in, so on Yom Tiv it is mutter to eat. That's the second answer. Or you can say perhaps the other way. The Ike the Aimer my imitzias nigmra, imisias kula nigmra. It has to completely come out. Imisias kula in. Of a ruba lo, that's a fukum Rabbi Yochanan. It's come to exclude the sheet of Rabbi Yochanan. No, rove is not enough. Actually, the entirety of the egg must come out. Okay, good. Hashayched as a tarnagailas. Person shechs a tarnagol, umatzaba beitzim gemurais, and you find inside the tarnagol complete eggs. Shumutar achlan b'challah. The chiddush is you're allowed to eat them with milk, even though you would think maybe it's considered to be like bas b'chalav. There's in Perek Chol Chalev in Masechtas Chulin, it talks about whether or not it's a deraisa or a banan, but certainly you should not be able to eat chicken together with milk. But when it comes to this egg, it's okay. It depends if it's ma'uris begidin, which means it's not completely developed to the point that it's a completely separate entity, but it's connected to sinews, so then already at that point it's not going to be acceptable. So this is a stringency that Rav Yaakov says regarding a Beitzah or begidin, that an egg which is attached to the gidin cannot be consumed with milk. That's one explanation. We're also going to say that he says another pshat we'll see soon. So man tanu the tanu. Who's the tana of the following? A person eats from a nevela, from a kosher bird. Now it's it's a kosher bird, but it was a nevela. So obviously you're not supposed to be eating from such a thing. So Rashi says Metama ha'oichla latame begadim. Shulabush b'shas b'liyasa. When you swallow it, it's metama also your clothes at the same time. V'in tumas magro masa. There's no din of tumas magro masa touching or lifting it up, as it's brought down almost on the last daf in Shas in Masechta Sida. So that's when it comes to Nevelos Oiv Tahar. So a person who eats in Nevelos Oiv Tahar, min hashalal shal beitzim. If you eat from a bundle of eggs, and Rashi says b'oiden ma'urin begidin, they're all still again attached to the sinews. Min hatzama yisumin from the bones or from the sinews min abasar shenitlash min achayin was detached from this living animal tahar. The din is it's tahar. So what is the chiddush? It's not considered to be nevela. It's not considered to be connected to the nevela. Min eshkol shel beitzim. Let's say we're talking about from an eshkol. Rashi says mibasar hashedra, the flesh around it. Shabeitzim adukin sham, and they're attached to it. Min hakurkavan, the stomach or the gizzard. Uvnei mayin oshaha moches achelev, or let's say the chelev, the fat, was melted down. V'gamoi, and you consumed it in that way. Tame. So in that case, the din is you're going to be tame. All these things is considered to be like the nevel itself. So man tana min shal beitzim tahar. Who is the one that said when it comes to the bundles of eggs that it's tahar? So Rav Yosef, Dolok Rav Yaakov. L'chayra, it's that leniency cannot be Rav Yaakov. Rav Yaakov, Aimer imahayim oris begidin asiros, because he said that if it's ma'uris begidin, then they're considered to be usher. So again, this is a second chumrah that he says that it's tummy, even though it's not eaten, as we're going to see, by all people. Nonetheless, that's considered to be a davar oichel, and therefore it's considered to be a nevela. Amrulei Abaya mamai. How do we know necessarily, as we're saying? Dilma adkan loikam Rav Yaakov hasam. Maybe the only time Rav Yaakov said his din over there is el inyan asura. It's just that he wants to go machmer. Nabal inyan tuma lo. But maybe he doesn't say this when it comes to dinim of tuma. Says Rashi, Yapa gab the law Boston in who that even though it's not really meat, also midrabanan. Maybe he's strict rabbinically. Hoyol, since karubim yois basar, it's close to meat. It looks like meat. V'ikol migzer mishum basar b'chalov, and therefore he's going to say, you know what? Let's be strict when it's more begidden that it looks like meat, and therefore we're going to say you can't have it with milk. How when it comes to tuma, the lav basan inhu the latamu, it's not meat, so it's not going to be matama. It's not considered like nevela. So again, abul inyan tuma lo. The chitem inyan tuma nami nigzer. So maybe he'll taka be geyser also when it comes to tuma. So just say it's a tuma durabanan, just like when it came to the concern of basa b'chalav. Now fushi tumahu v'yafushi tuma midraban lo mafashinan. So the whole issue is that you're going to be causing extra levels of tuma. And when you add and make things tummy which are really not tummy, Rashi says there's a hefet taharos. You're making things which are really pure. There's a monetary loss. So we don't want to do that when it comes to a din d'Rabbanan. So therefore, even though it's true, maybe normally he would be strict when it comes to basa b'chalav, when it comes to iser, when it comes to tuma, he doesn't want to be able to increase levels of tuma, not necessarily. V'ikadi armi mantana min eshkol shel beitzim tameh, which is the seifa, that it's tameh. So Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yaakov, so we see that just like when it comes to basa b'chalav, he's strict. So it's over here when it comes to the eshkol, when it's a cluster of eggs, that's considered to be aser, or it's tameh. So Amalei Abai Mamai, the eshkol mahanach, the talia be eshkol, dilma eshkol gufe. Right? Maybe, how do we know it's just that it's attached to the eshkol? Maybe it's the eshkol itself. Maybe it's referring to the ovaries themselves. So in this situation, says Rashi, basar hadavik, b'shedra, the meat which is attached to the bone, but beitzim adukin boy. So the sac itself, this is where the eggs are contained. and therefore, because of that, certainly it should be more problematic. So what's the chiddush? Obviously, that's something which should be matama as nevela. So maybe the havia kurkuvin uvnei mayim. Maybe you would compare it to the gizzard and to the stomach. The Boston meat. But a lot of people don't eat it. It's a chashminan. It still need to tell us the chiddush when it came to the korkavan and bnei mayim, that even though it really is, obviously it's meat, but so obviously it's tameh. The answer is because most people don't eat it, so therefore maybe it doesn't have the din of an eichel. So nonetheless, it's still tameh. So hachinami same idea, that since some people will not eat it typically, so therefore you would maybe think it's not considered the din of nevela. Okay. Weiter. Tanaban. Kol shetashmishu b'yoyim nolad b'yoyim. An interesting scientific fact, according to the Gemara, that if a person has tashmish shemitah, human beings which have tashmish shemitah, or so we'll see what rather, during the day, they give birth during the day. Kol shetashmishu b'layla nolad b'layla. If tashmish is generally at night, so then they're going to end up having a child at night. Kol shetashmishu b'layla nolad b'layla. If tashmish can be day or night, so that's a child can be born day or night. So what is this referring to? So kol shetashmish b'yoyim nolad b'yoyim zu tarnagolos. So when it comes to the tarnagolos typically has tashmish during the day, and therefore Gemara is telling us that when we have an egg that is born, it's typically during the day. Kol shetashmish b'layla nolad b'layla zu atleif, or a bat, which is more nocturnal, or other animals that are nocturnal. So because they're awake at night, and they have tashmish at night, that's when they also give birth. Kol shetashmishu bin b'yom bin b'layla is referring to Adam, v'kol dedamile, anyone which is comparable to a human being. Omar, kol shetashmishu b'yom nolad b'yom zu tarnagolos. So my nafkamina, why do we need to know this interesting scientific detail, especially in this particular masechta? Rav Mori Berei the Rav Kahana, the Rav Mori Berei the Rav Kahana, he says the following din: Badik b'kanish shel tarnagolan. Let's say you checked your nest of your hens, and you did an Erev Yom Tov. On Erev Yom Tov you checked, so at that point, below matzah Beitzah, you didn't find any eggs. So therefore, according to understanding, from the time that you checked, l'chayra, since you didn't find it, so at night, they're not going to be giving birth. U'lamachar hishkim, and then the next day you get up early, and Rashi says, kodem l'sashachar, before dawn, which means, again, l'chayra, you should not be able to find an egg. There wasn't an egg there before. U'matzah b'beah, and now you found an egg, mutarais. The din is, it's mutter. The question is, how can it be mutter? L'chayra, maybe you should think that it gave birth during the nighttime. So the answer is it cannot give birth during the nighttime. But what do you mean? You checked before. So maybe you did check on Erev Yom Tov, but again, it was Erev Yom Tov, you're busy doing all these other things, so maybe you didn't check so well. So probably what ended up happening was there really was an egg there, because it couldn't have been born in the middle of the night. So it was actually on Erev Yom Tov, that's what's mutter. But if even you did check pretty well, Imri Yatsaruba v'chazra havoy. Rav Yochanan, maybe what happened was that the majority of it came out and then it returned back in the tarnagol, and like Rav Yochanan, that it's considered to be a complete birth. Eini v'ha'ayim Rav Yosi bar ben Shaul Omarav Badik b'kana shel tarnagolos mirav Yom Tov, but we say not like that. That if you would check before Yom Tov, v'lo matzah b'beitza, you didn't find an egg, u'machar hishkim, and again the next morning you get up really early, u'matzah beitza asura. The Farish says it's asur. How can you tell me it's mutter? It says no. Hasam b'desafna ma'ara. Over there again it's the safna na'ara, which is referring to a non-fertilized egg. So a non-fertilized egg, taka, could have been born at night. That's true. But one which came from a rooster, that came from a tarnagol, so or the dichra, that certainly can only give birth during the day, and therefore that type of an egg you could eat on Yom Tov because it was born on Erev Yom Tov. Yihachi Rav Mori Nami Amam Arsafna. So why don't you say maybe that's where the egg came from? It didn't come from a zachar. It came from it was a non-fertilized egg. No, Bedika zachar b'hadah. There was a zachar. There was a rooster nearby, so it probably came from there. So 1 second. Bedika zachar nami amam arsafna. Now, how do we know for sure that's what happened? So Ravina, we know that Gemiri, there's a tradition. Kol heicha deika zachar will stafna ma'ara. It's not going to happen as a non-fertilized way. If there was a zachar, that is how the egg will have been produced, and therefore, if in fact that's what happened, then we know for sure that the egg again must have come from Erev Yom Tov. Question 1: Lo badik bikina shel tarnagolos Erev Yom Tov. Let's say you didn't check, right? We talked about a case you checked. Let's say you didn't check. Well, machar hishkim amatzaba, and you found an egg. The safna ma'ara, and again it's a non-fertilized egg. Ma din habetza mahatam. So this is, you need Rashi, because this is talking about where you did not check. So it's interesting, if you did check, then we're chayshish. But if you didn't check, we say the egg is mutter. Kivan deruba b'yoyma yoldan talin b'yoyma. Since the majority of them are born during the day, so we actually are toilet during the day. So again, if you checked, and it was a zachar by there, and you found it again the next morning or before the morning that there was a Beitzah, so then you know that that egg actually was from the day before in Erev Yom Tov. When it comes to Safna Ma'ara, where chayshish, it could be at night. However, if you weren't even baidik, so then according to Rashi, he says that a person is allowed to partake of that egg because roiv, in fact, were during the day. Okay. Weiter. So an interesting twist that they ask, which is only Rashi. So you could easily misread that question. Weiter. The ad kama. So until when? So Omer Rav Gam de Mishmei de Rav Kol Heicha. So in other words, how far? Where is this tarnagol? So as we continue to Zion Medbeis, Kol Heicha Deshama Kalya B'Yayma. As long as you can hear its voice during the day. So Rashi says Shahakoil Einu Nishma B'Yoyim Kibbalayla. Why during the day? Because the voice during the day does not necessarily carry as loud as at night when it's much more quiet. Abed Rav Mori Uvda Ajtin Bati. So he ended up paskening that you can go all the way until 60 houses. That's basically the how far that egg will be mutter, because we'll be saimich on this male, this rooster. The Ika Nahara will over. However, let's say there's a river, it doesn't matter if it's within 60, because there's no way it could have crossed it. Or the Ika Mavra over. Let's say there was some type of bridge, then we'll say that the Zachar passed it. The Ika Mitzra will over. However, let's say it's a Mitzra. Rashi says Chevel Kosher B'Rashi Shtei Seidais. There's these two pegs, and you have this one rope, and that's all it is between these two waters. So we say the rooster didn't balance somehow to get to the other side, as the old chicken story. There's no way it did that. Habi Ubdam v'Avra a mitzvah. Actually, there was a story, and it actually did go over this rope. So B'mai Kimta b'Desafna Ma'ara. So where it says the whole story, the Gemara, which we mentioned of Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Shoyel, we say is talking about the Safna Da'ara, and therefore that's why it's a problem. So Ma'yur Badak. So why do we say you checked it? This is the Gemara now. Kilo Badak Nami. So even if you didn't check, the Gemara says no. Kilo Badak Eimam Esmol Havoy. This is actually where the question number 1 is. That really, if you're not Baidik it, so then we could even be Saimech when it comes to Safna Da'ar that it came from before. Yihachi Ki Badak Nami Emi Yatsaruba B'Chazrahi Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yochanan Shliach. That's not common. Abiyam Rabbi Yossi ben Shoyel Amarav Haituma Shchika Sekanta Legluye. As a little bit of a sidebar, this Tuma Shchika, this garlic which is ground up, Legluye, it's dangerous if it's revealed. Says Rashi, because Anacha Shaisu Memenu Imaitzi Megula Umatu Bo Eres. It'll possibly put its venom inside. So you have to be careful when it comes to that. It's like a little bit of a side point, but again, if you were baidik on Erev Yom Tov and it's safna l'ara, so then it's an issue. However, it's usher. However, if you were not baidik, then we could be saimich that maybe me'esmal havoy. Why? Why would we be saimich aim me'esmal havoy? And this is the Rashi, the kivan the ruba b'yoyma yoldan ilo badik talinan b'yoyma. So it's interesting, kula, that will be saimich that perhaps it actually was born on Erev Yom Tov. Okay. Beis Shammai oimrim seor b'kazayas. So we've been talking about an egg for a while. Now we're going to talk about the second part of our Mishnah, which we have a machlokes Beis Shammai's hill l'inyan Pesach. He says that when it comes to sourdough, the minimum amount to be chayiv on Pesach is a kazayas. So my tamai to Beis Shammai. So im kain lichtav rachmana chametz v'lo boy seor. Why does the pasuk talk about chametz and seor? If really the whole thing is the same, so then just mention chametz and that's it. I would say, ma chametz in chamutz kasha. When it comes to chametz, in which it doesn't have the ability to ferment very quickly, nonetheless the measurement is because so seor shechamutz kasha l'kol shekain. It would be pashut that seor should also be a kazayas. So maybe it should be more than that. No, dialogue of dinlios kanadin. You can't go beyond that. So l'chayra, all I need to tell you is something which has more difficulty. It's more harder for it to become fermented, to become chametz. So therefore, you choose chametz over seor, which in itself, seor translated into yeast or sourdough. So certainly there should be a kazayas. So therefore, seor de kasar rachman alamli lomecha shiur shel zeh lo kashir shel zeh. It's coming to tell you that the measurements are not the same. So therefore, again, going all the way back to Daf Beis, the very beginning of this Masechta, according to Beis Hillel, he says that even when it comes to seor and chametz, it's a kazayas. However, according to Beis Shammai, seor is a kazayas. However, chametz, he says, is a kaiseves, is the amount of this date. So the reason why he disagrees when it comes to chametz is because it's something in which is more difficult to become problematic, and therefore he has this different shear. If you look at Rashi, l'haki nakat koiseves, d'b'haki havi yituvi daita, can mefarish time of b'yoyma, yinami shiurin halachamash masinai. We know that this is the measurement when it comes to on Yom Kippur. If you eat that amount of a dry date, koiseves, so then you're chayiv for violation of l'su'uneh, that you were supposed to afflict yourself by not eating on Yom Kippur. And by eating this amount, it's yisuvi daita. It's something which causes you to have more yishuv adas, that you feel a little bit better, the pain of hunger has subsided. Or the reason why he uses this particular shir, Rashi says, is because it's just shir and halacha moshe Sinai, as we find in numerous Masechtos, Erev in Sukkah, certainly, etc. Okay, weiter. So that's the reason why Beis Shammai has two different measurements. Beis Hillel Tzrichi says no, they're both a kazayas. So why does the pasuk need to mention seor and kazayas? The ikos of Rachmana seor havamina mishum dechamutz kasha. Maybe you would say, oh, maybe the issue is seor because again it becomes fermented very quickly. Abul chametz the chamutz kasha imalo. Maybe not the din of chametz doesn't apply. Tzricha the ikos of Rachmana chametz mishum deroy lachila, because you could eat it. Abul seor she'in roy lachila, just sourdough or yeast as is not something which is edible. Emulot tzricha. So therefore, that's the reason why he holds you need both. Beis Shammai, Leisel the Rav Zera, the question is, how could he not hold an explicit pasuk of Rav Zera? The Yom Rav Zera, pasuk hakasa b'seor, the sign b'chametz. Why does it begin with seor when it says seor liyim bativatechem and ends with chametz ki kol eichem achmetzes? So loimecha zehu shiru zehu seor zehu chametz. It's coming to tell you that they're exactly the same dinim, the same measurement. That is a kazayas. So when it says la'inyan achila kolam la'pliti, you're right. When it comes to eating, even Beis Shammai agrees that in order to be chayiv chametz, it's a kazayas. It's not a kaiseves. it's talking about a kazayas. Everyone agrees to achila. Ki pligi le'inyan bi'ur. When it comes to the requirement of actually burning the chametz, that if you have this in your domain, that you have to actually get rid of it, that is where Beis Shammai are arguing. They don't argue when it comes to achila. Everyone holds it's a kazayas. However, when it comes to beer, Beis Shammai savri li'alpin be'ir me'achila. He doesn't learn one from the other. He still savri li'alpin be'ir me'achila. Yitmar nami, Amar Rabbi Yosef Bar Chanina, ma'achlokas in beer. But in achila, when it comes to eating, the calls them as a kazayas. Everyone holds whether we're talking about chametz or seor, it's a kazayas. Tani mihachi, lo yirlocha seor, lo yirlocha chametz. Zel machlokas shebein Beis Shammai Beis Hillel, shebeis Shammai yoimrim, serve kazayas v'chametz b'chol seves. Beis Hillel yoimrim zevazeh b'kazayas. But again, the machlokas is not referring to achila. That everyone holds it is kazayas. Okay, let's see maybe a couple more questions really quick. Question 2. V'lo yirlocha chametz, lo yirlocha seor. Amai itzrach seor yas mekavach chaymer mechametz. So the question is, why do you need pasuk? So according to Beis Shammai, he says it shows that the measurements are not the same. The ein shir and shavin. Beis Hillel says no, they're both a kazayas. That the reason why it's mentioned is because of itzrach. Because you would think either when it comes to chametz, it's something in which is harder to become fermented, or when it comes to seor, it's something which is not royal achila. So therefore, because of that, we say that you need both. Okay. Let's see. Question. Let me see. I did that already. Question 1. Rabbi Gibber's test. Im badak kanem erev yom tov. You checked. V'lo matzabeya. L'machar hishkim. You got up earlier. Be'oid l'ayl. While it's still a night. L'matza Beitzah. He'im asura b'yom. So again, it's mutter if there is a zachar there. Then it was noiled on erev yom tov. But if there's no zachar, then it could be from the heat of the bird, and even gave birth at night, and is aser. Le'inyan ezadin kaimer of zera pasach hakasa b'sor v'sayim b'chametz. Seor was the same measure as chametz. Nobody argues by achila, and they are the same measurement. Okay, great. Let's see, TA 12 we didn't do yet. TB 14. Ma'acher b'kasav rachmana l'yirlecha chametz l'yirlecha seor lamuli. So similar type of question as we had before. So either according to the Beis Shammai to tell you that they are different shiurim, or Beis Hillel says again it's an itzrach as we said before, which is almost identical to question 2. So that's TB 14. TB 14. Okay. Weiter. Let's continue. So now the last part of the Mishnah talks about another totally different topic regarding Kisei Adam. Hashaykhet chayiv oif b'yom tov. So let's go back to the Mishnah. Let's talk about what exactly does it say. So the Mishnah said that if a person shechs a chayron oif, in which typically there's a chayiv of Kisei Adam, and you did it on Yom Tov. So Beis Shammai says yachbor b'deker v'chasa. He says that you should dig with a spade and cover it up. Beis Hillel says lo yishchait el imkein haylo efer muchan mibod yom. You shouldn't have shechted unless you already had the proper dirt already prepared from before erev Yom Tov. However, they agree b'diavad shim shachmas shachbor b'deker v'chasa. Okay. So again, the whole machlokas is not b'diavad. B'diavad, if you did it, we have to do Kisei Adam. But l'chatchila, the question is, should you do this shchita of the chayer oif if you did not have upper muchan mibod yom? So let's see the Gemara. Hashaykhet diavidin l'chatchila lo. So it said el chayra the machlokas is b'diavad. The language of hashaykhet is b'diavad. So ema seifa Beis Hillel amrim lo yishchait. Machlal the Tanakama sabri yishchait. So the question is, are we talking about l'chatchila b'diavad? Halo kasha. Lo yishchait v'yichasa kaimer. It says, do not shecht It's talking really about b'diavad. Hashaychet doesn't mean that it's b'diavad in l'chatchila. It's talking about that a person. It says lo yishchayt. You shouldn't do it. So the Seifa is very clear that it's talking about b'diavad. If you already did it, then you could cover it up. So Machal the Reisha lav di'evidu. L'chayr again, it must be the Reisha is not talking about the case of b'diavad because that's what the Seifa is talking about. So Marabba Hakikam. This is how you're supposed to read the Mishnah. Hashaychet sheba limloich. Let's say a person is coming to ask advice. Ketzad, what do you tell them? So Amrulo Ketzad Amrulo. So Beis Shammai Yomrim Amrulo, you should say Shachat Chaper V'Chasa. Then you should shecht and cover it up. Beis Hillel Yomrim Lo Yishchait. We tell them don't do it. El Imkin Hayaloi Efer Muchem Ibod Yom. So again, the way that we're reading the Reishas Pashut is that we're talking about a situation where a person came to you to ask a shayla. It says Rashi, After da shaykhet da alma di'eved al korcha chachal chachila. Even though the language of shaykhet sounds like it's a b'di'eved case, here we're forced to say it's a case of l'chachila, and he's come to ask you what exactly is the proper procedure. Should I do the shechita or should I not? So again, that's the machlokes Beis Shammai Beis Hillel, whether or not you have all this already prepared from before. Okay, so that's one answer. Armle Abaye. Let's make sure I said this correctly. Shemulimach Ketzad Armle Beis Shammai Armim Omer Lo Shachat V'Chaber V'Chisa V'Yisel Armim Lo Yishchad Elim Haylo Nevermuchem B'Bod Yom. Rabbi Yosef Amar Hakikamer. This is what it's saying. Hashaychet Sheba Limloich. A shaychet that's coming to consult Ketzad Omer Lo Beis Shammai Armim Omer Lo Leich. Go chafer shachay b'chisa. Dig, shecht, and cover. V'esil oimrim lo yishchot el imkain haylo efer muchem b'boyd yoim. So according to this, instead of him saying shecht, cover it, shecht, dig, and cover, here he says dig it first and then shecht. So this is the difference in the language. Amar by Rav Yosef. So leim amar Rabbi but Rav Zera and Merabkim must be that your argument is exactly the procedure of Kisei Adam. Dear Rav Zera and Merab, a sheichet ser sheetin after lamatl v'after lamalo. You have to almost make it a sandwich. You have to have dirt on the bottom, then there's blood, and then you cover it up. Shenemer v'shafach hasdama b'chisahu be'offer. Offer will never el be'offer. Malamid sheichet ser sheetin after lamatl v'after lamalo. Demar islay Rav Zera. It must be this way of this language of dig it first and then shecht is because that shita holds they have to first have offer on the bottom. The other opinion of Kisei Dam is saying you don't have to have anything on the bottom. Or no. Everyone holds that. Everyone holds it has to be done on the bottom. So then why do we have this language change? This is what they're arguing about. Rabbi Savar Iika offer lamata in ilo. He's saying that if you have offer already on the bottom, then we allow you to do the shechita. Why not if you didn't? Chashin dilma mamlich aboy shachit. Because what happens? Let's say there's no dirt, and we start saying, okay, so you can start playing around with the dirt, which in itself you're not allowed to do except with tzar chachila for the purposes of the mitzvah of Kisei Adam. But let's say you decide not to do it afterwards, so it becomes problematic. We don't want you to start digging around in the dirt and producing the first stages for Kisei Adam, and then you don't end up doing the shechita. So it was done for no reason, and therefore I will only allow it if it was at least on the bottom. The Rabbah, we're going to read that. Hadifa, the ilo sharislei, and we don't allow him. Asalim nuye misimchas yomtiv. We're going to end up causing this person to not be able to enjoy Yom Tov. So basically, what he's saying is that we have the problem that if you don't allow him to do the bottom, if it wasn't done, so then he's not going to have food for Yom Tov. So we want to make sure that he does have food for Yom Tov. All right, let's see one more piece. Again, b'di'eved, everyone says that you could do this. Amarav Zreika Amarav Yehuda Hu Sheish Lo Dakar Noitz Meboid Yoim. Not so pashut. You have to already have a spade that's stuck into the earth from before Yom Tov. It has to already be in there. Katisha. So l'chayra, you should still be allowed to do it. There's an isser of katisha, of grinding it down. So it says Rashi, Rabbi Yehuda parach, the Omer, b'ushiesh l'dakar noyetz. Why would you say, Rabbi Yehuda, that you have to have the spade in the ground, right? Still, alma the time the masnisin lamishim the asi aseh de v'chisahu bi'ofar. It's not because there's a mitzvah saseh of doing kisei adam, and that pushes off the lo saseh of kol malacha. El mishum de kfar chafar v'oimedhu. It's because it was already prepared. But still, according to him, you're still doing a malacha. Shedayim regavim medubakim. It's still all as one big clingy amount of earth. So it's still l'chayra. It's still problematic. So the ena ruin l'chisoi. Right now, it's not fit to do kisoi with this the way the earth is. Ela imkin kachshan, until you kind of grind it up. The Kodesh told it to teichen. There's an issue. One of the isuri malacha is grinding of tchina. That's a malacha. So how would he allow this? Again, if you would hold that come naseh is doichel lo saseh, that's one thing. However, that's not the reason why. In fact, he's telling you they have to have a dakar noitz. So it's still an issue of katisha. So Rav Chia Barashi Amarav, as we continue to Chesam Aleph, be offer tichuach. We're talking about loose earth, and since it's loose earth, we don't have to worry about the issue of katisha. You don't have to grind it up at all. Guma, but you're still making a hole, and there's another malacha. Rashi says a boina, a building. For instance, Rav Abba hachayfer guma b'Shabbos. Let's say a person digs a hole on Shabbos, but you don't want the hole. All you want is the earth. Patolel. In that situation, your pata, says Rashi. The first time of parakam to chagiga. The first parak in chagiga says the enu sarch el ofra. You only want the earth. Bulagumi. You don't want the hole. Enu boina. You're not building. Right? If you need a hole, let's say you want to build a swimming pool, so you dig in the earth to be able to make a beautiful pool. So that's boina. That's part of the construction. However, you don't want the hole, you want the earth. In this situation, it's mekalkel. The chol mekalkolim paturin. When it comes to kilkel, you're patur. Okay, now let's see a couple of last questions. TA, where did the T be? TA 12. Amar Rabba. Beishami Omrim Armelo Shachar Chafar V'chisa. First shecht it, then dig it up. You have Yosef Omer Chafar Shachit V'chisa. First dig and then shecht. So b'may kimifagi l'maskana. So it has nothing to do with whether or not the din of Rav Zera. Everyone holds a Rav Zera that has to have earth on the bottom and on the top. The whole machlokus is we're concerned. Is there a possibility that if you don't do this, chashinan dilma mamlich lo shachit, you may not end up shechting? Or we say no. If we don't allow him under this circumstance, then aslim nui misimchas yomtiv. We don't want him to be not able to enjoy on yomtiv. So therefore we're lenient. Okay, we'll end with Rabbi Gibber's question over here, which is question 3. So whether you hold like Reb Zera that the upper must be also put on the bottom or just the top and not the bottom, everyone holds like Reb Zera. The machlokus is, are we afraid he'll go and put the upper down and not shecht, or do we say it's better not to hold back Simchas Yom Tov? Ad kan.